All right, well, let's get started. Do you turn us on?
You're good to go.
Okay,
Right
thank you.
now.
So, welcome everybody. First order of business, we open our meeting at 5:04:03.
Okay.
Minutes of July 14th. Everybody had a chance to review them?
Yep.
Motion,
Make a motion to accept the minutes of
July
July
14th.
14th.
Or second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Sorry?
That's a lot. I'm just gonna
We
question.
didn't really say that, that was a hiccup.
In last paragraph,
Yep,
I'd asked about other town-owned property under the charge of RDIC, and Ron was supposed to check it out. Did you guys ever figure that one out, about other properties?
I'll let Ron answer that, as you
I'm at a
probably.
loss for what other property we're talking about.
Well, it's in the minutes.
Yeah, I don't remember, I don't remember what other property. You can
Dick-
think of it.
It says here, Dick asked other town-owned land is under the charge of RDIC, and Ron said it is unlikely. He didn't believe that it's under the RDIC charge, but he said he would look further into the state law.
So my understanding as of right now is that only the Heights property is specifically under the control of the RDIC. The question of, could the town put other property, the Board of Selectmen chose to, I believe they could put other property under your jurisdiction if the town wanted to do so.
Just a comment, please, because RDIC was formed way before the Heights, and it was
Yeah.
there.
I was just gonna make that comment.
Yeah.
It's not, it can't be specifically for the RDS, for
Well,
the Heights.
the town has not given you control of any other land in town specifically.
I think if you looked at the bylaw that was written for, you will find
Because
You have
there's,
control of what land?
the
Well-
town-owned land.
Mike, if I'm not mistaken, the cell tower is one example of that.
I just
would
want,
mean
I
that
just,
any-
I just want everybody to be up to date in what, where we are with it, that's all.
That, again, so the question I would have to be able to look up further on it would be, if you think that you're in charge of all town-owned land or undeveloped town-owned land, or what are we talking about? Because there's a lot of town-owned land that, I don't know why any group would have control over under the Board of Selectmen. Now, at some point in time, if some decision was made by Board of Selectmen to give you what we would call undeveloped land, and put it under RDIC, that's possible. I wasn't here for that, but since I came here, the only explanation I've had is you were in charge of Heights property. So if there's anything different, anybody has anything went through town meeting or something, or Board of Selectmen votes, you'd have to show me, but I was not aware of any of that.
Peter,
Mr. Chair, Dick, what, if I may, what bylaw are you talking about? Because the only bylaw I know is the Heights bylaw in zoning. There is no general bylaw about RDIC. There is no,
it's,
A charter,
if
right?
I might jump in, it's not a bylaw, it was an article that was passed at a town meeting. I don't know specifically
yeah.
what it says,
okay,
but it does not, I'm 99% sure it does not specifically say we're only responsible for Rutland Heights.
But what land, if that was true, Mike, what land would you be responsible for? It doesn't make any sense. For instance, the town owns the land under the schools, right? The town, the
Oh, no,
schools
I'm
have,
not
there's a
saying
whole
that
bunch of land.
I'm not saying that the RDIC is or should be responsible for all town-owned land. What I'm saying is I don't believe it specifically says we're only responsible for the Heights.
Okay. So I would say in the absence of it specifying what lands that are under your control, it means that all lands are under the Board of Selectmen's control unless it was specifically authorized to be under your control by the Board of Selectmen or by town meeting. That's generally the way the laws are written. If it's not specifically stated that you're in charge of something, that power stays with the Board of Selectmen. That would be my immediate response. Unless you can, again, we can look at the language and see what the language says, but that would be the norm. It has to be specifically stated that you are giving control of a specific piece of property. It's not general like that where they would say, oh, you have all the
Well,
land.
again, I don't believe it specifically says we're responsible only for the HPDD property.
Well, there is a bylaw that says you are responsible
Oh,
for
yes.
HPDD, and in fact, state law as well.
That's
But-
true, but I'm saying the article, when the RDIC was formed, did not specifically say that you're only responsible for the Rutland Heights property.
That could be
I
true,
suspect very strongly that was merely an acceptance of the section of MGL that formed the
Probably
RDIC,
right.
and by state law, that doesn't give you authority over any property,
Right.
which is one of the reasons that the Heights bylaw and state law specifically give the RDIC that authority. By state law, RDIC is fundamentally a marketing organization. Look for opportunities, advertise. That's what I remember of that section of MGL anyway.
I have to look at, I put in that report I gave you, Mike, the economic development report they have. It actually had the state reference to the RDIC in it, but I don't have it off the top of my head, but it's in there if you look at that. But it would have to be, in order for you to have control of any land, that land would have to be specified either through an article or selectmen or something. It wouldn't be broad like your suggestion, so it has to be specific.
I'm not suggesting.
No,
that.
well, what he's thinking, right? So that would be my,
So Dick, what are you asking Ron to do?
To read the 300 annual reports to find out where it was started and, no, I don't know.
It's easy to talk to Anita.
Anita?
She can within a half hour, if she has to go and find the correct book,
Yeah,
get the public records for what happened at town meeting to say, this is the exact article that was passed.
I think
And
that'd be
it'll
the
remove
best.
all
we
question.
can find that out.
okay.
Well,
Thank you.
I think it's fair to say that it's the opinion of the selectmen that our responsibility is only the RDIC, only the HPDD, based on the fact that they're attempting to form an
Economic Development Commission.
So they're
But
forming a
that's-
separate commission than ours that,
But that's not necessarily true either, because as someone mentioned, the cell tower is not on Heights property, right?
correct?
Yet were given authority to do something on that property, right? So there's gotta be something else other than the Heights property to allow you to do that.
Mm.
What that was, I don't know if it's another article or what it was, but you had to have some expansion of that for that purpose, because
Well,
you guys got the money for that project.
Again, from memory, what happened there 25 years ago was we set the whole deal up, but it was the selectmen that ultimately signed the documents. So,
Yeah.
And that's the normal course of events as I understand them with EDICs.
So, do you, only because you mentioned it, I don't care, do you want me to discuss the Economic Development Commission,
well,
what the consideration and thoughts are about that? Because I've expressed them to you, but I have not expressed them to,
okay,
other members
why
of-
don't, can we go through,
hey, do what you want,
I'd rather
if you're
do-
ready for that, when you're ready to discuss that, I'll give you
Alright,
my
so-
thoughts on it.
are you happy?
Okay. Yes.
I'll look at that, we'll
Okay.
find out.
Thank you.
Okay, first
that-
order, go ahead, sorry.
The vote.
Oh, you kinda did,
Yes.
okay. So we're back to our minutes.
Minutes, yeah.
There was a motion made to accept the minutes. There was a second. We just had discussion. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
You good, Tamika?
Good.
Was a little roundabout. but-
That's okay.
Next order of business on the agenda, discussion, commission member resignation and recommendation for an open seat. Franz Steiner resigned effective July 28th. To whom it may concern, this letter is to confirm my resignation from the RDIC of Rutland, Mass. Was submitted to the town clerk on the 28th. So we have a vacant seat. I would suggest that we individually or as a group, if we have anyone that's, we think is interested and appropriate, we approach them, find out whether they're interested, and if they are, get letters of recommendation so we can forward them to the board of selectmen. Anybody, any thoughts? Okay.
I've seen this board of selectmen has voted to accept recommendations for resignation, I don't think it's required.
Oh, it's required.
But they do, but they have done that, accepted resignations that were given through the town clerk's office, so yeah.
Okay, so, I guess I'm asking you to think about it,
Mhm.
otherwise we're gonna, you're gonna get, you know, we're gonna get what we get, and I'm not saying that's bad, I'm just saying if there's someone that you think would be, you know, valuable and would fit in with the group, I'd rather do that than. So, I guess if that happens, if you have someone interested, let me know, and we'll deal with it that way. All right?
Sounds good.
Harbor Classic Homes update. Let me just dig through a couple of items here. Let's see, August 13th, we received a draft A&R plan with drawings, with a list of a timeline of the items that they had on their hit list and when they were going to be done. So I know that Dave has been in communication with Peter Campobasso and others. So they are proceeding along. I should tell you, in addition to that, my opinion, personal opinion, was that the only potential showstopper to this project would have been when they went and did their inspection pits. If when they did that, they went, "Oh my God, we just can't deal with this. We don't want to work here." That's not what they came away with. They dug, I don't remember exactly, I think it was 12 or 14 test pits. They saw nothing that, concerned them to that point. So I thought that was a major accomplishment. I have been reluctant to put that announcement out that we talked about at our last meeting, announcing that, the project was moving forward and what it was, because I didn't want to do it and then have them go up there and do test pits and have the whole thing fall apart, and frankly, that wouldn't have been a very good image. Now that has gone by, I have been after them for the better part of 3 or 4 weeks to send me a document saying, "Hey, we've done our inspection pits, we don't see any major issues, we're now going full-blown into engineering." It's taken much longer than I'd hoped, in many uncomfortable conversations and emails, and it all came to light over the last 4 or 5 days why that was happening. They have made a determination that their engineering firm that they had hired is not able to handle this in the timely fashion that we want and they want, and that's the reason for the delays. So they just this week have been talking to other engineering firms. He told me yesterday that they had 2 in particular that the owner and the engineer was going to interview. They were going to select one of those and then get back on track. Because of this delay, and why don't I read to you the letter that I received from him yesterday. So this is from Peter Campobasso after many prods from me. This is a follow-up to our conversation last week and your request for an update. As you know, Ron Coivo was at the site a month or so ago and did perform some test pits. He was generally satisfied with the test pits. I've obtained a title search and abstract records and will be providing Sharon the required letter of title and survey objections for her and I to discuss. As you and I started to discuss, Howard Classic Home is in the process of transitioning to a new engineering firm to take over the project from New England Engineering LLC. Because of this, HCH has been delayed in having certain site work and investigation completed. I've had some discussions with prospective engineering firms to advise them of the project requirements and the need for estimated timelines of completion of survey and engineering design plans. HCH will be making a decision shortly on the firm they will retain. I will then be in a better position to advise the RDIC of a realistic timeline for submission of the necessary applications for the various permits required for the project. Therefore, I request the RDIC agree to an extension of the inspection period from September 3rd, 2021 to September 24th, 2021, to allow HCH to retain a new engineering firm and reserve the right to perform any inspection the new engineering firm may need to verify or complete the engineering plans. I will then be able to provide the RDIC with a timeline and a sequence of work to be performed and the assistance needed from the RDIC. See attached proposed extension. Let me know if the RDIC is agreeable to this request, blah, 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 blah. With that, he sent a document for me to sign, basically saying this is between the town of Rutland and Harbor Classic Home, references the property location, extension of property inspections, references made to that certain land disposition agreement dated June 28th, 2021, between the town of Rutland, the seller, and Harbor Classic, this isn't long, by the way, and Harbor Classic Homes LLC, buyer for property designated as Lot A off Maple Ave, Rutland, Mass, as it further describes it. The parties agree that for the time that the parties agree that the time for the buyer to perform inspections pursuant to paragraph 4 of the land disposition agreement shall be extended from September 3rd to September 24th, time still being the essence of the agreement is extended. In all other respects, the agreement is hereby ratified and confirmed, this extension executed in multiple counterparts as intended to take effect as a sealed instrument. So, in summary, because they were not getting timely enough responses from their engineer, they've decided to hire a bigger engineering firm. Apparently they're gonna keep him on to do other work. So they've lost some time, so they're basically saying, hey, can you give us a push of 3 weeks, which, I mean, I'd rather not do it if we didn't have to, but we don't have any choice, so, I guess yeah, sure, go ahead.
Just a question, so truthfully, I don't have a big problem with the 3 weeks. Trying to understand, they first gave through a set of plans originally that were the high-level plans. And the next step is the specific detailed plans, right? How long is it going to be, are they really just sitting back? Because as I remember, the closing is based upon them getting the detailed plans done, right? And then submitting for any permits. Is that now set back 3 weeks? Because we were talking about
I think
October
that's-
closing.
I think that's fair to
I
say.
think our original closing was October, am I correct? And now,
I said November
are we in
1st, but
November?
you're right.
Truthfully, I expected this to happen even later, so I'm not surprised. But
Oh,
does
yeah.
that turn this to a November closing date? What does that mean?
Well, so let me just read to you what his hit list was in his other document. We have been working on the following items and will provide a timeline once we receive some verification from necessary parties. 1, a survey. 2, title search and title commitment. 3, additional site inspections. 4, A&R plan. 5, formal site plan. 6, NOI and orders of conditions with Concom and DCR. 7, road opening permit. And 8, sewer connection permit. So they kind of got their ducks in a row, but I think it's fair to say yes. What they're saying is that they've slipped 3 weeks,
Well, that's not bad. So I guess the clear question I'm asking is, what do they now approximate the closing to be? Because they haven't really said that. They talked about the slippage of time. So are we talking about the end of November now? What are we talking about that?
yeah,
Maybe we can get some clarity from Peter about
I
that.
think that's probably a fair statement.
And that's not unreasonable, I don't think.
I don't think it's unreasonable, but we'll get to another. Well, let me just kind of spin into just digress just a little bit. I had a conversation today with Becky about a different issue.
Not the money, right?
And she then raised a whole separate issue, which I'll now read you her email. And I know I'm giving you a whole bunch of information all at
Yeah.
once, but so she says, I'm looking for direction and more information from RDIC on the status of sale of property at Rutland Heights. We currently have $280,000 remaining in debt owed for the original purchase of the property from the state. The BAN, B-A-N, I don't know what that is.
Anticipation notes.
Okay, is coming due on 11/5. This will be the 10th year we've renewed the ban, which is supposed to be a temporary borrowing method. Since this is the 10th year of renewal, we'll have to either permanently finance the remaining $280 or pay it off. I know we have a deposit and a purchase and sale sign with Harbor Classic Homes to purchase a portion of the property. I believe the closing was originally supposed to happen in November, which would have been perfect to pay off the remaining debt. But before I reach out to our financial advisor about what our options are, I want to get a better idea of the status of the closing from your committee. So I told her very frankly, I said, look, Becky, you know, I'm gonna give you kind of the best guess. And, you know, I guess if I had to guess, I think if it closes, you know, by the end of the year, or maybe even sometime in the first quarter of the calendar year, that's probably a safer bet than,
And I agree, to be clear, right, so when she borrows money for the town, she borrows it on a short-term basis, and at some point, they finance a long-term bond, or, in this case, the limit to short-term borrowing was 10 years, coming this November. So we're right close to the limit, so what she's saying is she's gonna have to go out and do the long-term bond for this project. What it means to us is that there'll probably be some extra borrowing costs that are now gonna be associated in this when we get whatever money we get, there'll be a little additional money as cost for the long-term borrowing. So it's gonna cost us a little bit of money because it's not done within the 10-year time period. And it's a little bit more work for her because she puts it into a long-term bond. But she does as a package of things, so it's not the only thing there. So it's not the end of the world, it's just a formality she has to go through. And if you could have told her it was clearly gonna happen in November, then she wouldn't have to worry about the long-term borrowing. I agree with you,
it's not gonna happen.
this is gonna happen, could happen in December. I just think you go along, just go for the long-term borrowing, because we're not gonna meet your deadline. That's my opinion.
Okay, so back to the original discussion. So you're kind of up to speed with what's going on with Harbor Classic Homes. Does anybody have a problem with me signing this extension and returning it?
Not at all.
I mean, we don't have a choice.
As a matter of fact, I was very nervous because
Sign
I
it.
thought maybe they were pulling out.
Oh, no. So, would someone make a motion for me to sign this?
Also move.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that pretty much takes care of Harbor Classic Homes unless anybody has any, well, I have one other thing that I made note of. The access road issue, I've had rather lengthy discussions with Peter Campobasso about this. I was pushing and suggested to him that if they're not ready to do it, I think the town should proceed and do it. His opinion is he'd rather let his engineer get on board, get his hands around the project and understand what's going on before we go off on our own and do anything. I have to agree with that. I think it makes sense. So that's, to me, a big milestone that has to be, I don't think it's gonna be a big deal, it just needs to happen. So,
Can I ask a question, Mr. Chairman? I think we sorely advised the Board of Selectmen about this access road
yes, we
issue.
did.
So they are somewhat aware of it. We should just keep it on their plate, that, this is gonna come down the road at some time. As I recall, the developer was talking about paying about half of it, we would pay half. So we just wanna keep that before the selectmen did. Remember, this is coming down the pike, and it's gonna be part of our, when we do the closing, that's gonna be part of what we have to set aside some money for.
Okay, next, unless anybody has anything. Yes, sir, sorry.
Quick question, two questions. One, has Peter mentioned when he's gonna have the A&R ready to get before the town? Because that's really the first step before engineering does anything. Because that doesn't lay out the houses, but the bounds are basically taken care of. I thought they'd have that done by now.
Dave, can you offer anything there?
At this
I'm
point,
not putting you on the spot, I haven't had a specific discussion with him about
I
it.
think you covered it. Right now, the A&R is a draft A&R. The timeline for other items has been identified, and that item needs follow-up from Harbor Classic Homes on whether they want to pursue that.
I just wanna, to me, I don't think this is a big engineering push. I get it for the design, but for an A&R, it's a,
Well, the only thing, let me say this about that, I think the roadway issue is
Okay.
critical to the A&R.
okay.
Well, do you agree? I mean, we need to understand whether that roadway is gonna be a doable thing, which then will tell them where their back lot line is gonna be and where the access for the second means of egress is.
Yeah.
I guess I'm struggling with where that stands, because I thought it was still out in the air and it's no decision. I know there has to be engineering done, but has there been a decision, like Ron had said, we're gonna do half, they're gonna do half, and then the the
That's
lines,
gonna be part of the definitive plan sign up.
You
okay.
That's
need
what we
to know what
agreed,
the
right, Dave?
engineer says and what the costs are, kinda hash all that out. so
Yeah,
that-
but before the definitive plan, typically an A&R is done before any builder ever gets into a definitive plan. That's at least the process
Yeah,
I've
But he's
undertaken.
gonna have to find where the border is, though, that's the problem.
Have they surveyed it yet?
Have they what?
Even surveyed
I,
it?
you know,
I haven't seen it yet.
I did see surveyors up there. In fact, Bonnie, I think you saw surveyors,
Well,
did you not?
that was Simpson and Weston, they were doing sewer line work.
Oh, okay.
That was my only, I'm
I'm
just
not-
trying to get a timeline.
I'm not overly concerned about the A and R at this point, because the A and R has to be granted. There's sufficient frontage to access the property. The issue of the road and third means of egress is a negotiating piece for the definitive plan. We have some understanding of where the applicant stands at this point with respect to their engineering issues. And we certainly will follow up, as we do with Peter Campobasso and his group on a periodic basis, to get more information on the A and R.
The only reason I ask it is, it gives me more of a warm fuzzy that they're in the game. Because right now, we don't, I mean, I get that they've done the test pits, but when the A&R is approved, then the next step is definitive, so it tells me that they are moving forward. It gives sort of that, I guess, the warm fuzzy feeling that they're gonna move forward with the project if the A&R has been done and
Right.
granted.
Yeah, I mean, you can have a elevated yikes level until it's signed off on if
Yeah.
you want to, but, you know, they've done a whole bunch of work, you know, I mean, they had an excavator up there for a couple of days with 4 or 5, I mean, they didn't have skin in the game.
Okay,
I think
I just-
that doesn't even enter my mind anymore. We're way
Alright.
beyond that as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, exactly right. If they're gonna be looking for a larger engineering firm, they're about to spend money on the second level of investigation, and they've done their subsurface, and they're ready to move and spend the money for the engineering. I think that indicates some level of confidence that they're moving forward on this
Well,
project.
they've given us $95,000. I mean, they've given it to Holt.
then the second question is, with that road, if I remember right, there was a lot of negotiation that might have to be done with the state. That just seems like that, isn't that, because I don't think they've given permission to redo that, it was all
No.
conjecture.
They have not.
And that seems to me could be a
But-
long process.
We've gotten some assurances that it can be done in a reasonably short period of time.
Okay,
Because it was a pre-existing roadway, and it's just, you know, theoretically being resurfaced. I mean, you know, that's kind of a stretch, but it's still there. It's just a ground surface of the old
Okay.
roadway, so.
I know what Director Buckley's been through with the DCR in the last year or so, and I didn't want this to get sidetracked because we get stuck in the muck, so to
Oh,
speak.
believe me, when I talk to Peter Gambabasso, I talk to him about every conversation.
Okay,
So
It
I
just-
would expect within the next week or two, when they get their new engineering firm, you know, on
Okay.
board, this
all
will.
right. Those are my only two big concerns with this, keep it moving forward.
All right, I'm gonna skip the next one just for a minute, I'll get back to it, because I just wanna, jump over it. The Route 68 cell tower, it was mentioned earlier. Ron doesn't even know about this yet, but I have been talking to another cell tower company that wants to buy, the rights to that tower. I just don't understand where these folks get their I'm gonna say the nerve to make the offers they do. I mean, I'm just, in general, we're collecting about a little more than $23,000 a year right now. And every year, there's a 3% escalator, so it goes up 3% every year. They've offered us if we'll sell them 25 years worth of their ownership, they've offered us $319,000. So I mean, you know,
It's an easy answer. No
yeah,
way.
yeah, in 55 years, they're offering $450,000. So, to me, it's just not even worth talking about, but I just want you to be aware that even though this really never comes up in RDIC meetings since we signed it, I just don't want people saying I'm doing things without communicating.
Did they give you, Mike, they give you a formal proposal?
Yes.
Can you forward that to me if you don't
Yes.
mind, just so I can look at
Yep,
it?
I just got back to it today.
Through the chair?
Yes, sir. You know what, I'm willing to relax this Robert's Rules thing. I mean, it worked.
Thank you, Chair.
It worked before. Let's make sure it continues to work the way we
Okay.
used to do it.
On assessor's map, it shows, the square where the tower is, roadway, is that part of it, or is that just an easement from the town?
I haven't read the lease in a while, but I believe that's just an easement from the town.
From the town?
I'm 90% sure of that.
So if we wanted to utilize
Use it.
part of that road to get up into the back,
I believe that's doable.
doable.
I don't think I have that with me. I don't have the lease with me, I'm sure I don't. But I'm almost positive that's true.
All right.
Is there a reason you're asking that?
Yes.
Okay.
The Ag Commission is interested in a piece of property above the rail trail. So,
Okay.
we're just trying to look ahead and trying to figure a few things out before we go to the town.
Well, if you wanna call me, whatever, I'll get the lease out and I'll read it, or I'll forward it to you, or whatever you
Okay.
want. So you're clear on that.
Thank you.
But you gotta call me, cause I'll never remember to call you. Okay, now let's just jump back to the HPDD site. I have here mowing in the remaining parcels. I've talked to, Mr. Buckley a couple of times about mowing the existing parcels, that are there. Parcels, whatever they are now, B and C or 3 and 4, I don't know what they are.
The dump?
Yes, and
Every
and
2
he has said he
years.
will get to it when he can. He's short-handed, just like we all know. But I think we really need to get that done before the fall, because it's really kind of growing up. You look at that Mosio parcel now. I mean, pretty soon it's not going to be able to be mowed. It's going to have to be.
Ground.
Yeah, exactly. We don't want to go there. So, I just again want you to be aware of it. Here's a question that we need to have a discussion about, and whether tonight's the night to do it or not, I don't know. There is, I'll say this, and I mean it with all due respect, pressure from, guessing the Board of Selectmen or the town administrator, either one, to put out an RFP on the remaining parcels. So I think we need to talk about, we as a committee need to talk about, what do we think should happen to the rest of the property, and how should we handle it? So, if you wanna talk about it now, we can. How long do we have this room, Tamika?
Till 6:30, but, they have to.
They have to
leave.
go at 6, okay. All right,
And I have another meeting at 15:15.
all right, so I'll tell you what, just hold that thought for a minute. If we have time, we'll get back to it,
Yeah.
but, there's a couple other things we need to talk about. So I wanna get back to that. We have a member from the public here who would like to discuss, the 300th, town's 300th anniversary and potential usage of the property. So, Ms. Dibb,
Well, thank you.
you can come up here, if you want. You can stay there if you want to.
This is very preliminary, but in so many discussions with historical society, with 4th of July, we wanted to find out where we stand relative to access to the property, particularly hearing that there might be a closing of a sale of a piece of it. A couple things that have come up have been a little bit of an expansion to the Festival of Trees that the Historical Society does. That would include a possible craft fair. That would be on the Naquag property. But again, knowing November, I think what I'm hearing tonight is the roadway is not affected, but we would expect to see a little bit extra traffic than we typically do at that point. We've also been approached, and this is not at all finalized, to try to get one of the professional carnivals in that they used to have back in the day. Certainly the flat portion of the Heights was brought up as a possibility. Are in contact very preliminarily with Finelli Amusements to see if they're available. Possible dates for that would be the exact tricentennial weekend, which is June 18th. That would involve a great need at that point, if it were to go there, for access to the property and the roadway as a whole, in order to allow for traffic control and things like that. So I think that's kind of where we're starting, and we just wanted to bring the RDIC in, make sure we get approvals where we need them, make sure we know what our limitations are, so that we don't overstep or overask or whatever.
Okay. Well, you certainly can't over-ask, and I don't think you can overstep. From the standpoint of roadway, I can't envision any circumstance where the roadway from Maple Avenue through the school will not be accessible. No matter what happens for Harbor Classic Homes, that's just not gonna, it's not gonna affect that. In regards to the actual parcels being available, I can't envision any circumstance where those parcels would not be available. Can anybody else?
Where's the flat piece located?
Well,
That's not parcel,
I don't know which
it's a-
one she's talking about, but the
Well, if it's
Mosium one is certainly a very flat piece, and,
Yeah.
and the parcel on the other side is,
Well, if it was on, let's assume there was a closing, I don't know what the timing is, Sheila, but
Like it's
let's
5
assume the
or 5
closing
now.
happened in December, then after that, we won't have any control over the piece where Harbor's building.
we're not talking about that piece.
So that's what I'm saying, that's my question, is it the other piece?
Yeah.
What we refer to as B or C in my,
Correct.
okay.
I
that's
don't
fine.
think that's, like, behind Mojo's is good to have a carnival too, I mean,
I don't
it's.
know. All I'm saying is,
It's rough,
I can't
It's rough.
envision any
Yeah.
any circumstance where both those parcels would not be available next June.
The only road.
Sheila, when are you talking about? What,
Oh, sorry.
June of '22, what are we talking about?
Yeah, apparently the last carnival that the town held, and I was not here for it, I think there are people in the room that would remember far better, it was held in Memorial Field. And that engenders an entire other list of concerns relative to the sports teams that I think since the last carnival have grown significantly, use the fields a lot more, wouldn't have alternatives. So we are kind of, again, just looking at possible options at this point. And, you know, if the carnival were to come out and say, yeah, this is too rough for us, this isn't gonna work, well, that would be our answer as well. But we don't wanna even offer it as an option if it wasn't.
I see no reason
Well,
why.
what if, Mr. Chairman, what if you did put those out for an RFP? And although I don't see it happening by June of 2022, because it takes you at least a 4-month process to go through an RFP, right?
Right,
that
so
puts us
let's
again
just
in
say it
shape. So I
takes us,
think-
takes 2 months to get the RFP
Yeah,
done.
so you're talking, but here she's talking about 9 months from now, right?
Mhm.
So in theory, it depends upon what you guys decided with, if you want to do an RFP or not. It could have impact on that, but it's unlikely depending upon
Very
how
unlikely.
fast you move, right?
Very
The only thing, Mike, I wanted to bring up is if Harbor did get started in the spring, they've got a lot of road work to do for the electrical and all of that road dig up. So that's the only thing I wanted to throw out there was if they started construction, which is all the utilities coming into the new subdivision, they've got a lot of electrical to bring in. And I don't know about water and sewer, I don't know that, but I know from the electrical side, they've got a lot of work to do, which means it's
I
gonna
mean,
be
you're
on the
basically
road.
talking a trench.
Yeah,
I mean,
and then
Yeah,
the
talking
pits,
closest.
Jim, or I was gonna say, if Chris was here, he knows that they gotta put in vaults and stuff like that
Yeah.
for the electrical, so there'll be some digging, but I doubt they'll ever close the road off, it'll just be, construction
No,
work, and
they're
that's
not
pretty much it.
I mean, there's too much school bus access and everything outside, it's,
Yeah.
yes.
And if I may, the one last thing that we'll ask directly for is, there's been a lot of discussion of the historic aspects, obviously, of the Rutland Tricentennial, and we're trying to put together a speaker series, hopefully have the Massachusetts Director of Archives come out and speak on the overall Rutland history. But a lot of people are fascinated by the Heights property. We are getting an enormous amount of interest and energy regarding the Tricentennial. Obviously, it's going to bring in a lot of people and a lot of business as we celebrate over the course of the year. And we're hoping maybe the RDIC might help us in doing a tour of the property or someone appropriate to speak on its history. We have so many people here in town who have no idea what it looked like when the buildings were here, what it was when the buildings were here, what the environment was in that respect. So relative to, you know, a possible fast tracking of any further production on the property, you know, in terms of sales and things like that, I don't want to speak for the committee, and I won't. But speaking for myself, from the 300th, it would be lovely for the town to be able to get through this coming year and celebrate the history of that property, and have that be part of our town's heritage.
I think it would be an absolute miracle if something happened between now and June.
I think I hear the 300 committee going and redoing the rose garden right now.
Honestly, Dick, that would be wonderful. And
If there were any roses left, it would be nice.
yeah.
You'd be surprised what the heck is still stuck in there.
Yeah. So, does that answer your question?
Not entirely.
Well, ask some more then.
We are hoping the RDIC might help us put together maybe a tour and speaker for the Heights property. You know, if it can't go near the sale portion, or if it highlights the sale portion relative to the fact that the legislative requirements had been met and the property was sold at profit, great. You know, you know, to Dick's point, to show off the old rose garden, to show off the flagpole and all the history there, I think you're going to find that there's a lot more interest than.
You know, it'd be interesting if you could find an ex-employee, you know, someone who used to work there. I mean, that's the person that, you know, you put all the pictures up on a, you know.
Used to wash the dishes.
Jim will do it, he used to wash dishes there. But you know what I'm saying, I mean, if you had someone that really knew it, I mean.
I think we could take a panel, right? We've had a couple of people who were nurses up there who spoke up and said, I remember. You know, they remember the property itself. Whether or not there's still someone available who was more of a grounds manager, I don't know.
Well, I know unfortunately, the last plant manager for the power side, he's passed away, but Eddie Nygaard, he was the last plant manager for the power plant up there, but he passed away about 4 years ago, so that'd be a huge guy, because he knew all the facilities, the underground tunnels, everything.
You know, two people that come to mind right off the bat that obviously didn't work there, if they did at all, would be like Tom Rashaller and Doug Briggs, both who live right next door to it, and, you know, not only grew up on it, but after it was closed, probably spent as much time in those buildings as the rats did.
Well, there's always Brett, and I can't remember Brett's last name, who was the superintendent who took it down. I mean, he was in all those buildings. I can't remember Brett's last name, but he was the superintendent that was part of the taking all the buildings down, you know, going through all the buildings. I can't think of Brett's last name right now. Seth knows him. He lives in New York, but he comes to Rutland a lot.
Okay. I mean, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
If you guys can send us an email, a text, anything you can come up with.
Sheila, I'll dig out Brett's name and send it to you.
Great.
Can't think of
Good.
Yeah.
He's the
Only
one who
between
found all the
9:30 and
cupolas,
12
all that
tomorrow,
little
we'll talk
stuff
about
in
the
there
banner.
and saved it.
Okay, and
The
we
last
probably got the
surgeon,
select board's
he used
discussion.
to live
Okay.
in Holden on South Street, but he just
That
moved.
concludes that part of our discussion. Let's just jump back to at least a preliminary discussion about the remaining parcels. I guess, you know, we've never really talked about what we think should happen to the rest of the parcels. I have an opinion, but I don't want to share it because I don't want to influence anybody.
I have an opinion that all should have been ground down and kept so it looked wide open.
Yeah, okay, well,
And
got
to me,
let's just talk about,
Like, what's the rush of doing another one right away? I mean, what happens in like 20 years? We do need a grocery store, we do need something,
Or a place to put town buildings.
something.
but yeah,
I mean, why, if we get enough money to pay it off and it's gonna be free and clear, maybe we should just sit and wait a little bit, that's my opinion. Why rush?
until I Joe
I
Bucket.
would, Mike, this is my personal opinion. I think parcel A next to Mozio's is the opportune place for the town to grow with buildings that need, I know we don't have the money now, but senior center, town hall, those
Post
fit
office.
perfectly right there. That's my
Post
opinion.
office.
Okay.
So I'm not in favor of putting A out for RFPs. C, that's the one, see what can happen with it. I'm okay with putting that one out, because that really doesn't have a growth potential for town buildings, but we're just, I mean, we've got the town hall that's millions of dollars to restore, and I don't think it's worth it, that's my opinion. We've got a fire station that needs to grow. We've got a lot of things, senior center that needs to go up. I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah.
potential, and that's a great piece of property in relatively close to the center of town to do it at. That's my opinion.
Bonnie, thoughts?
Well, I have a friend whose name is Bob Oreo. He owns the Holden Rehab. So I contacted him to see if he might be interested in talking with us, looking at the land for something that he could use. So we met with him, and
Well, you said we met with him. Expound a little more, because that's exactly why I asked you the question. I was hoping you would go here.
so he met, the three of us met, and he seemed quite interested in it, sort of. So then he went back to his team, and they said they've had it, you know, with COVID, and they didn't feel that moving to another campus would be a good thing. So it actually got them thinking, and I think they now may expand in the back of their building, in their parking lot. So right now they're thinking that they would add more services in their own campus, but they had thought about some of the things that we had talked about. So I don't think that's, but he expressed he would be happy to come and talk with us about what things you could do. And he talked about not having it be a gray ghetto, bring more things that the town would enjoy. You know.
Bonnie, that would be a phenomenal place with a senior facility
Well,
going
that's what
right
he
up
was
next to
thinking.
it.
It would go hand in hand with that. He said maybe a little restaurant where people could get together from the town, maybe a new post office, maybe who knows what. So that was a thought. It's not,
Okay.
I feel that if it was opened up and you saw how much open land that could be utilized, even though when Peter Crane said, you know, no buildings are gonna be allowed over here, you can't, you know, get that close to the pond and all that stuff. To me, it's a shame, because you've been in there, up near Tom Rashala's folks' place there, you know, there's quite a bit of land
there's
that's up
good
high.
land there.
Yeah, so,
Ron, did you have something?
Yeah, so I had raised this issue, and I don't see it as an urgency, but I'm gonna redefine the land back to the way I understood it when I read the original agreement. I think a parcel A is the land where Harbor Homes is being built, and at one point, my understanding was they were gonna build on parcel A and parcel C, that was the original plan. And then parcel B, kind of as I remember reading the report, that was gonna be a municipal use thought process of some type. That was the way I think the original study plan defined it, right? So when the plan changed from, okay, we're gonna build all the units on parcel A, in my mind, that freed up parcel C for potential economic development, right? So one of the things that I originally thought was a great use for that is, and I had actually talked to Harrington Hospital, I happened to be talking to the director about COVID, and I suggested, hey, you guys interested, because they were expanding out Harrington Hospital and building like urgent care centers and things like that, and thinking that with the 55 and older
Sure.
housing, an urgent care or some medical facility would be a perfect match to that, right? So my suggestion was maybe we should put this out for an RFP again, and we could put it out for those kind of uses, because you can define the RFP for any way you want, right? Secondarily, another use that, and this goes to, we're gonna talk about the Economic Development Commission maybe not another night, but in terms of the future, you know, the board has asked me to look at economic development opportunities. And in my opinion, after looking at the opportunity for industrial, commercial, and everything else, in my opinion, the long-term best economic development growth in Rutland is more agricultural tourism than anything else, by the nature of what the town is. The problem with attracting tourism to Rutland is that we have no overnight stays. We have nothing. We have the Rufus Putnam House is the only place to stay. In order to be successful in agriculture, tourism, or any tourism, you have to have a place for people to stay at overnight, right? Which led me into maybe Parcel C as a spot for a bed and breakfast or a hotel or something to draw people in to stay. And the reason why I think that's attractive is Worcester is short on hotel space. And what's happening is Worcester, because they're so short on hotel space, you're getting a lot of extra hotel space being built in Sturbridge that is feeding the need for people. They're going from Sturbridge, staying in Sturbridge, and going to Worcester for business. We're even closer to Worcester than Sturbridge is. Plus, I think we have a lot of, we're not Sturbridge Village in any means, but we have a lot of things here that I think guide real well to tourism. We've got the rail trail, we've got the state park, we've got all the farms, we got the breweries coming up out. We've got all kinds of places to hike and walk and fish and do everything else. We got a ski loft that's not far away, and we have Worcester for tourism. So I think primarily that a future growth area in this town could really be agricultural tourism. But in order to make that work long-term, hotel space or some overnight space is needed. And I thought that may be another potential use. Family members who want someplace for their family to stay, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But that would be another potential use for that parcel, what I'm going to refer to as Parcel C. The logical point I think that you made is actually a good one. The town at some point in time is gonna need expansion of municipal use. The buildings stink. And one of the things they need to deal with is repairing the existing buildings, which is a problem because we're not investing in our existing buildings. So the senior center needs to be brought up to speed, town hall needs to be, a lot of work that has to be done, capital work to improve these buildings. I'm not sure if you're ever gonna get to replacing these buildings, which is what you're referring to.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Public safety, maybe that's gonna have to happen at some point. I don't know if that's the right course or not. And I don't think you're gonna see that for quite a few years. We can't even get people to invest in fixing the buildings, never mind building new ones. I understand your point, I don't disagree entirely, but I thought, at least one of the things that, when I came here, they pushed on, is the center of town, they want to look at economic development. If you're gonna do any economic development in terms of retail, commercial, it's gonna be in your town center, right? So to me, I'm not always excited about municipal uses in the center of towns, because, like, town hall is important, but a lot of other ones aren't important to be necessarily in the center. So, that was my thought process, and I'm saying, well, if we are gonna have, if Parcel C is now available, we should look at putting that back out and see what, see what we want, put that out in the RP in the way we want it, and see if we can attract anybody. Is there an urgency? No, but it's land sitting there for potential economic development growth that we're not using, so, I guess the question is, how important is economic development growth to you, and when do you want to start dealing with it, right? So that was why I said to him when it came up, when we found out this is, let's get from Harbor Homes clarity that they're no longer a Parcel C, that wasn't part of the RFP, and then that gives us the option to consider what to do next. But those are some of the things I've been thinking about, how to use that space in a way that will benefit the town. Economic development can happen faster than municipal use.
Yeah,
That's a thought.
And my point to that is, when I look at, Dick and I've talked about this, 20 or 30 years down the road, we really have no other town property of any size to put any of those large buildings on as expansion. And that's why I would have no problem, and again, I apologize, is B the one over towards Tommy's, is that B, and then A is the one right here? Let's go with the two front properties.
Yeah.
The one on the right next to Mozio's, I think we should save. The one on the left, we should RFP it out. That's my opinion.
All of it?
I apologize, I'm not sure.
Or,
Yeah, when you go into the Heights, the one on the right is what I consider the Mosio, which has some 20 acres or something like that, or 16?
Oh.
No?
no,
6.
6?
yeah,
It was
6.
originally, the Heights, the Harbor Homes is on what was referred to as parcel A.
Okay.
That was parcel A.
So is it B and C?
Where's B? I thought C was across the street on the left, and
That's,
B was in the front towards
that's my
Maple Avenue, is
recollection.
that
C
right?
is on the left and B is on the right.
B is the
Okay.
Maple Avenue front piece, right?
Well,
And
they're both front pieces.
Okay, but the B, in front of where Harbor Homes was gonna be, that's where I had, at least in the reports I read, was a thought from Mr. Hughes, right?
Yes,
In the
that's what I
original
was
report.
thinking.
And C, which was gonna be used by Harbor Homes, was gonna be Harbor Homes or something as that RP. That was gonna be used for some
Oh.
economic development. That was the way when I read the initial report,
Okay.
as I interpreted it. That's why it keeps changing, but that was what the initial report said.
Excuse me, you guys have a meeting at 6 or 6:15?
6:15, so we got
Okay.
a few minutes.
My opinion is much the same as Jim's. We're not making any more land. Once it's gone, it's gone. You know, I mean, you've heard, you know, the dire need for athletic fields for kids. You know, I just don't see what the rush is, and I'm not saying any, well, you know, since we're getting asked to develop the RFP, I guess there is some rush, but, to me, I just don't see a need, you know, if you just wanna look at the economics of it, we basically just sold parcel A for 3 times what we paid for the entire parcel. So we own it free and clear, plus, I'm gonna just say $1 million, it's not exactly true, but close. So, you know, I just don't see the urgency to it. And you know, parcel C, it has wetland issues, but I believe that in the front corner by the guard shack, there's probably 2 or 3 acres there that something could be built on. And, you know, let's just think outside the box. Let's just suppose the whole Mosio property becomes some sort of athletic, you know, soccer fields, baseball fields, whatever. And then maybe a senior center gets built across the street behind the guard shack. And on the outside of that building are restrooms that the kids can access, and maybe a snack shack, you know, kind of like the pool has, only it's part of the senior center. It could be a really nice complex that, I just agree with what Jim said, is, you know, once it's gone forever. And to me, if it sits there for 20 years, so what? I mean, we've already gotten 3 times value for it, to say nothing of the renewable, you know, the tax revenue that, I don't remember the numbers anymore, but it's,
300,000 or 400,000.
I think it's more than that.
Just to be clear, Mike, I agree with you in terms of not looking at parcel C as a moneymaker for taxes. Really wasn't looking at it in terms of our return on investment, which is what you're talking about with the money coming back in. I was looking at it as, this town keeps harping to me that we need economic development opportunities, and that's in the centerpiece in town, whereas generally where your commercial property is, where your economic development happens. So I mean, we're doing this whole center study committee. That's generally the place for economic development. That's what the concept of that is. And like you say, where else is the land for economic development? There's not much else other than that either. So it comes down to a choice of what does the town really want to do with that land? Does it want economic development? Does it want open space? Does it want municipal?
Well,
That's a decision that listen, that's a town
even
decision.
more important than does it want it, is it there? Is there opportunity for economic
I think the
development?
55 and older gives you more opportunities now. That gives you
Well,
opportunity
all I'm
for
saying is,
urgent care or something.
you know, we can talk about, you know, bed and breakfast and all this kind of stuff. Is there someone that's gonna pony up and buy that land and build a bed and breakfast? Who knows?
Well, we gotta put up the RFP to find
I'd
out.
like to see your town center study and your economic development committee come to some conclusions on what they think the opportunities are and where they should be.
That's a reasonable request. That's
Well,
part of what
I just think then that might help us say,
Feed it
yeah,
to
okay,
them.
that, you know, that kind of makes sense. You know, again, if you came away with a, you know, something that augmented the senior housing, you know, maybe it's, you know, urgent care or, you know, a Briarwood type place like Worcester has, you know, that might make sense. But again, once the land is gone, it's gone. And there's, to Dick's
And that's why, Mike, that's why I think in the RFP, we would dictate the kinds of things we want, and if we don't get them, then we don't sell, you know what I mean? So we would dictate as the RFP, because just because you put an RFP doesn't mean you just gotta go to whoever bids. The request for proposal allows you to ask for certain types of development, and if they don't come forward, you don't go for it, you know?
Well,
So-
what is it that's gonna be the deciding factor in what that type of development is? Is it tax dollars?
the
mean,
question is, and
that's what
again,
I'm
I don't
hearing.
know. All I keep hearing from everybody is we have limited economic development opportunities in town and the citizens are paying taxes. We need to have more businesses because we don't wanna pay more taxes. That's what I hear all
Okay,
the time.
so that answers the question. What they're looking for is tax
They're
revenue.
looking for revenue, but I think they're also looking for
Not gonna get it.
certain types of
Jim.
economic
no,
development
there's no
opportunities that
business
benefit them
coming.
as well. I think they would love, you know, a movie theater, something that, you know, I'm not sure that urgent care is the answer for that, but they think they want positive stuff for the community, whatever
Michelle.
that might be, shopping or.
I think there's, I think, Ron, I hear what you're saying, and I know what you're saying, and even from the surveys that we've put out. But we've also heard from the CMRPC over and over again, what Jimmy is saying, what we're saying is, people, the businesses aren't gonna come here. You might get a restaurant, or you might get, but even, there was a doctor in town, and she ended up moving to Holden, right? We're not a go-to community, we're a drive-through community. And I think people need to wrap their heads, like, a lot of people want Market Basket, a lot of people wanted a supermarket up there. But the point is, people say they want things, but how realistic is it to get those kind of businesses in town? You know, and then they'll say that what things they do or don't want, and not everyone even agrees on that, right? So I think we have to be a bit realistic about that. And the other thing I would mention is that there's a lot of land on the outskirts of town in the light industrial. Like 122 toward Paxton, there's a lot of land still there. There's a lot of land still on 68 that could be developed. And I think, you know, if you were gonna do anything, we might be better off trying to solicit businesses that would maybe do some kind of production or manufacturing or light industrial here, right? I know you're shaking your head, but retail isn't gonna, it just isn't the answer. It doesn't connect with the reality of what businesses will want to come here.
And I completely agree. That's not what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting urgent care. I'm suggesting potentially small hotel or bed and breakfast. I agree with you. You're not gonna get big box retail here, and you're not gonna get manufacturing here. It's not. It's not the market for it.
Well, it's
Sure.
been here before, though.
What's that?
Manufacturing's been here before.
You might be able to get some small light manufacturing here, but the problem with that is that
Sims
most of
Cabs
those
was not a
manufacturers look
small-
for areas where they
That
have
was a
transportation capability. They like to be near highways, they like to be near places they can move their product in.
But like I said, Sims Cab was there, and that was not a small operation.
There's some, but it's not easy. This is not, our town's not attractive for that, but that doesn't mean some local guy who's into manufacturing would do a small manufacturing. That's possible anywhere, but it's
Yep.
not an attraction. It's not like we are a great place to do manufacturing, and frankly, I don't think the town would be very supportive of anything but very light manufacturing anyway, you know?
So,
But just ideas, again, I'm not
So-
asking for any
So
decisions.
then go to Boston and tell those stupid idiots down there why they didn't build 49.
That's a whole other issue, I know.
because it was
Because
running
that-
through
that-
my living room, that's why.
Hey, that'd have been okay. You know, we can
Well,
see
that's why
you,
you
Mike.
want
Again, this discussion is really, I think, just for good discussion. We're not looking for any decisions.
No,
We just wanted to
you're
talk.
right.
Right, so I think
And have
you're
a
getting a
conversation.
flavor from the committee that we think we should just sit in the holding pattern, at least short term.
Let's get Harbor built.
Yeah.
That's
That's my
exactly.
opinion. Let's get
I
Harbor
couldn't
built, let's
agree
get
with
that
you.
finalized, and
Yes.
then move on to the next
And,
step.
and why don't we just try to help Harbor by, Mr. Buckley wanted to do something around the pond, you know, a trail or something like that, for those people to enjoy or whatever, our trail that we have around the heights already. Let's get that taken care of.
Well, I said to somebody, I don't know who it was recently, Are you familiar with Dean Park in Shrewsbury?
Yes.
You know, it's a pond, you know, with a dog park next to it and you know, fields and picnic areas
Nice,
and,
yeah.
you know, to me, you know, clear out all that sapling brush, leave all the trees this big and put picnic tables down around there and keep it mowed and it would be beautiful.
Place for your tourism too, I mean, that's the
That'd be
thing about
beautiful.
tourism.
You can't build on it because it's too close to the DCR
Right.
land, so.
So it's perfect, you know, put a
You
walking
can
trail
see-
that goes
you
around
can
the
use it as a
property, and
park.
a walking trail that starts and ends there.
There's a paved one.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah, only if you pedal.
So
Yes.
Harvard Classic may change our flavor a little bit.
May,
So
but I think only
Let's
time is
wait.
gonna,
let's wait
Tell
and
us
see
that.
what it does to us.
right,
Yeah,
I agree.
I'm
Yeah.
buying, that's what I say too, just let's.
All right, anybody, anything else? You know, I sometimes feel as though I schedule meetings too far apart, but I don't really have a lot to tell anybody. And there's no point in having a meeting just to have a meeting, so if you ever feel like we should be having them more frequently, just speak up and I'll do it.
The only thing I asked Mike is, today I was lucky because I got stuck.
Yeah,
6 o'clock, yeah, I gotta do 6, cause this just happened to, the
Yeah.
stars
Well,
aligned and I was able to
I
get
did
out.
5 to try to coordinate with
Okay,
your
yeah,
6:15 meeting, so that we.
This one I understand, but it's down the
All
road,
right,
we
I'll
could
do
do
the best I
6.
can. Motion to adjourn?
And sometime maybe hands-on, and I say, take a hike up at the heights.
You've told me that before.
Yeah.
Betcha, and I'll say it again.
I'm taking a
Motion to adjourn.
second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Dave, thank you.
Nothing like